All right, Broncos country, everybody take a seat at the table. We need to have a conversation about Evan Engram and the unrealistic expectations that are being placed on this player. I want to make it very clear. I like Evan Engram. I think he's a very good football player. I think that he is coming in here to play a very important role in this Sean Payton offense. But that role is not the tight end position. By trade, yes, Evan Engram is listed as a tight end. But if the NFL allowed teams to list players as athletes or multi-position players like college teams do, I would almost guarantee you that Evan Engram would not be listed as a tight end. In fact, I think it's a little bit more appropriate to call him a big wide receiver, a big slot receiver, because that's really the position that he plays. You look at his snaps in Jacksonville, and yes, he would get the occasional inline snap. He would play inline at times, but most of his snaps in Jacksonville and most of his snaps with the Giants came in the slot. He was playing as a big slot receiver. Think about how the Denver Broncos used little Jordan Humphrey for the past couple of years. Think about how they tried to use Greg Dulcich before they just realized that he was non-playable. That is the role that Evan Engram is coming in here to fill. Ironically enough, little Jordan Humphrey signed with Evan Ingram's former team, the New York Giants, and Engram is coming in here to replace Humphrey. He's going to fill that big slot role. When you look at Evan Ingram's player profile, he does not fill that inline Y tight end role, mostly because he's undersized. He's sub 240 pounds. You need a guy who's 250, 260 plus to play inline as a tight end, because if you try to play an undersized player inline, especially on downs where you need them to stay in to block, that player is going to get exposed. Players who are 230 pounds cannot line up on the edge and take on a 250, 260 pound edge rusher. That's a matchup nightmare, and that's where Evan Engram really gets exposed in his game. You have to be safe with those kind of players, and you really have to put them in a position where they're not going to get exposed out there on the field, and the best way to do that is to put them in the slot as opposed to inline tight end. I think that the Denver Broncos still need to add a true inline tight end to this roster. They have Adam Troutman, who currently fills that role. And for me, Troutman is an okay player. He's competent at that position, but he is not a difference maker at tight end. And the Broncos need somebody who can be a difference maker at the Y tight end position. Engram, more of an F guy, more of a guy that you can move around and get mismatch nightmares that way. Evan Ingram's a great player for that role, but he's more of the Jimmy Graham in the Sean Payton offense as opposed to the Jeremy Shockey in the Sean Payton offense. I don't know if those two coexisted together, but they played very different roles in the Sean Payton offense. And you think about just players who Sean Payton's had before. Yes, Jimmy Graham and Jeremy Shockey both played tight end, but they couldn't be more different players. And it's just like that with Evan Engram and Adam Troutman. Yes, by trade, they both play technically the same position, but they really play different positions altogether. And that's why I think the NFL needs to add multi-position designations for players. Just call them athletes, man. If we weren't calling Evan Engram a tight end, then I would have almost zero issues with this move. But I see people here in Broncos country, and there's nothing against the creator of this post, Carson, nothing against Carson at all, or anybody in Broncos country that no longer thinks tight end is a need, because they're looking at this as like, okay, they filled the need. They brought in Evan Engram, but Engram fills a completely different need for the Broncos than what they have right now. They have a need at Y tight end, at inline tight end, and unfortunately, Engram just does not fill that role. He fills a role that the Broncos needed to fill once they knew they were going to move on from little Jordan Humphrey, but this will not stop the Broncos from drafting a tight end high in the draft. I think the best true Y tight end in this class, outside of maybe Tyler Warren, who's kind of a do-it-all guy, is Mason Taylor out of LSU. I like Taylor quite a bit, and I think he's a very cromulent blocker, and he can be a mismatch nightmare in the receiving game at the Y tight end position. So you fill your F role there with Evan Engram, then you can fill your Y role with a guy like Mason Taylor, and that's what I think is ultimately going to happen. We should not set unrealistic expectations on Engram that he's going to step in and be the number one tight end for this team. He's not. He's going to be the number one big slot receiver, F option. Sean Payton loves to mix up his personnel groupings, so Evan Ingram's going to be on the field quite a bit, but it's not going to be very often that we see him line up tight to the line of scrimmage with his hand in the dirt on the line. You're going to be seeing him lined up in the slot, stood up in a wide receiver stance. And that is the role that Evan Engram is best at. He played in that role in Jacksonville when he had that 100-catch season just 2 seasons ago. I think that that's going to be the role that Sean Payton utilizes him in. Again, think the Jimmy Graham role, not so much the Jeremy Shockey role. Alright guys, be sure to leave a like on this video as well, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments section below, guys, how do you feel about maybe some of the unrealistic expectations that are being set on Evan Engram right now? And how do you guys feel about the Broncos needing to address the tight end position even further? Even though they did bring in a guy in Engram, they still need to address that inline position. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. I would love to hear from you as always. And before we get out of here, guys, I want to tell you about the affiliate partner for today's video, Green Gridiron Helmets. Use code DENSYN, DENSYN, link in the description below to save off your first purchase on authentic NFL helmets. From small replicas like this one behind me to full-size authentic helmets. Again, that is code DENSYN to save off your first purchase from Green Gridiron Helmets. Thank you so much to them. And until next time, guys, I'm your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.